it is my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to this General Counsel Roundtable on behalf of the fourth floor and our fabulous law firm partner, Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister. Today's topic is a really good one, and it's a really important one. It's about how to maximize one of the most important relationships that you can have as a general counsel. So that's the relationship with outside counsel. The particular focus is outside counsel to consigliere, and it will be a rare opportunity to hear from general counsels working at all different types of companies. So, large public company, recently acquired private equity company, also a growth stage company, smaller company, but hear about their experiences maximizing the outside counsel relationship as a general counsel. We're going to talk about a broad range of things: hiring, firing, working with a wide range of outside counsel that can make this relationship an especially valuable asset because, understanding how to leverage and how to maximize these relationships and get them right can really, make you or break you as a general counsel or as a law firm lawyer. It really cuts on both sides. So it's a really important topic. We did have over 200 RSVPs today, so it's a full house, and we expect more people will join. Please keep yourselves muted. If you could do that, we would appreciate it. And make sure you have your questions ready, because we will be doing our best to pay attention to the questions that get posed in the chat. And if you can put a Q in front of the question when you give it to us, that will help us keep track of the questions and make sure that we get them to the panelists and to Pyle, who will be moderating at the end of each discussion section that we've allocated for questions from the audience. So don't be shy, we want your questions. Okay, finally, before we dive in, just a very brief word about the fourth floor. We are all about hacking the system and providing a place for women, especially lawyers, to initiate and advance for-profit board careers, earn equity, and invest. And we're doing all of this by tapping into the under-leveraged value of women entrepreneurs. We also are really focused on helping women founders access funding and growth opportunities. We do that by helping them leverage advisory and governing boards, and also through our Backroom Investment Club, which is brand new and just came out of beta. If you're a member and you want to join, you can do that in the platform. Finally, as I said at the beginning, if you have never come to a board bootcamp, please consider signing up and joining us tomorrow for board bootcamp. We're going to put a link in the chat, and we'll give you a discount code. We'd love to see you there. It's a great way just to learn all about what we're doing and how you can get involved, whether you're interested on the candidate side or on the founder side. And then last announcement is just, if you're listening right now and your company is serious about DE&I, and especially if your company is actively seeking to add women to their boards, whether as advisors, directors, or board observers, please direct message me or Kat at any point in this discussion, because we have a solution for you and we would love to talk to you about it. Okay, so enough about me. Let's get to the point of today, which is this critical relationship between general counsels and their outside counsel, and that moment when your outside counsel transforms to consigliere, and what that can mean for you as in-house counsel. So, speaking of skilled and attentive outside counsel, it is now my absolute pleasure to introduce our moderator for this discussion today, Pyle Kashani, who is joining me here in the spotlight. Hello, Pyle. Welcome. So glad to have you. Pyle is a corporate partner at Taft. She focuses on general corporate matters and transactions, including M&A, private equity transactions, and debt and equity financing, and I'm sure lots of other great stuff. But I will turn the mic over now to you, Pyle, to further introduce yourself and introduce the panelists, who we will also be joining us, pinning them right now to the spotlight as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Breen, and thank you to the fourth floor for having Taft as a sponsor. We're very excited for this event. As Breen mentioned, my name is Pyle Kashani. I am a corporate partner here at Taft, and I have been with Taft for over 7 years. We represent, and I specifically represent, companies from infancy to exit. We've done, multiple different industries, and honestly, I often work as outside general counsel to multiple different companies in different industries from small to large. So this is near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to get some more information for all of you in-house counsel or outside general counsel to strengthen your relationships. I have with me 3 esteemed panelists. I am going to allow each of them to introduce themselves. Jacqueline, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jackie Lee. I am Vice President, General Counsel at Flynn Restaurant Group. Flynn is the nation's largest restaurant franchisee. We own and operate over 2,300 restaurants across 6 different brands, 44 different states, and employ just around 73,000 employees. And we are the 3rd largest restaurant operator in the country, right behind Starbucks and Chipotle. You will recognize many of the brands that we operate in. We have Applebee's, Panera, Taco Bell, Arby's, and more recently, Pizza Hut and Wendy's.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacqueline. It's so nice to have you on the panel. Julie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Julie Honor. I'm General Counsel at 3Q Digital. We're a performance marketing agency and help transform brands into market leaders through managing and working through their digital marketing efforts. I oversee all of our legal function as well as the HR function, and I have a change management background, so I do a lot of coaching and leadership trainings within my company and outside on change management.
Thank you, Julie. Ramona, would you like to add your background, please?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ramona Mateu. I'm Chief Legal Officer and Chief Compliance Officer at ThoughtWorks. ThoughtWorks is a global consulting company. We integrate strategy, design, and software engineering to enable our clients to become technology disruptors across many different industries and to thrive as digital businesses. I am based in Chicago, and I've been at ThoughtWorks for about 14 years. Started off as Associate General Counsel, became General Counsel, and the big milestone that we had last year is ThoughtWorks became a publicly traded company.
Great. As you can tell, we have a wide variation of representation here, from company size to experience. Let's get started with our first question. Let's start at the very beginning. How did you inherit or start your outside general counsel representation? Were you inheriting a relationship? Were you cultivating a new relationship? Jacqueline, I'll have you go first and sort of give us a background as to who you're working with and how that came to be.
Sure. So when I started with Flynn back in early 2018, I had just followed my mentor from the firm who had joined Flynn as their general counsel 6 months earlier. And when we started working for the company, we inherited many of the outside counsel relationships that were in place. We focused at that time really primarily on litigation, much of which we handle in-house, but there were overflow matters that we had outside counsel relationships for. And many of those relationships came from insurance company panel counsel relationships. And at that time, what we noticed was a couple of things. One is that some of those relationships had been in place for so long that I think those relationships were taken for granted, and we weren't getting the kind of performance that we would expect of folks who valued our partnership. And the other thing we noticed was, at the time, it was a very non-diverse panel of outside counsel, because as you can imagine, the folks who own the relationships with insurance companies tend to be of a certain demographic, not diverse demographic. And what we wanted to do as we began to expand our legal function beyond litigation was to start to populate our bench of outside counsel to better reflect our employee population, the population of guests that we serve, and also reflect the makeup of our legal department.
Thank you, that's helpful. So as you were working through some of the outside relationships that you inherited, how did you make clear what standards you had? And did you at any point have to terminate those relationships or, in any way get past the inherited unsuccessful relationships?
We did. So as far as your question about setting expectations, setting standards, in addition to our outside counsel guidelines that we provide with each new engagement right from the outset, something that we do is have a discussion about how we like to be communicated with for particularly complex litigation. I actually have a template that I used when I was an associate at my previous law firm to communicate weekly updates on that litigation, and just share that and say, this is what has worked for us in the past. You know, we expect to get these promptly on Fridays every week, and that's been very successful, just being very explicit. We've also had, you know, relationships with outside counsel where they weren't meeting expectations. And in that instance, my approach has been to be very candid about how the outside counsel is not meeting the expectation and give them an opportunity early on to course correct. So for example, if I've had emails multiple times that have gone unanswered that I have to follow up, I will say, I'm concerned that I haven't received a follow-up or a response to this email. And that makes me worry about whether this case is being managed with the appropriate amount of resources. Like, can you tell me more about how you are going to correct this issue? And sometimes they can't turn it around. And then it's not a surprise that when we decide to sever the relationship, either at the conclusion of the matter, which has happened occasionally, we just don't use that counsel anymore, or we decide to make a change, which is no small thing. But you know, we have to be custodians of our client's interests, and we need to do what's right for the client, even if it's a crunchy experience. And then other times, outside counsel is really grateful to have had the opportunity to get the feedback. Sometimes they are able to be very candid back about what has been causing the issue. It has helped them get additional resources when they needed additional resources. It has helped them uncover issues with associates who are struggling and needed additional support that otherwise, had no one mentioned anything, the associates would still be struggling with those issues. So my approach really has just been to be very frank and direct, and that has worked.
Great. Julie, I'm going to have you jump in and explain for our folks that are listening in exactly what it is that you inherited when you became GC.
Yeah, so I've joined a couple of different companies as the first legal hire, which I think puts you in a very interesting position with outside counsel because they are used to working with non-lawyers. And it's a very challenging transition for a lot of law firms to work through when they all of a sudden have a lawyer as their business contact as opposed to a business person as their business contact. And so in each of my GC roles, I've inherited all of my outside counsel, and very few of them end up sticking around, and for various reasons. Sometimes I've had the same experience Jackie mentioned of they're not taking our relationship, they're taking it for granted, they're not respecting the relationship. I see a question in the chat of how do you deal with this? I mean, the same way that Jackie did, of be honest. I'm a huge fan of feedback is free education to excellence. So give them the feedback. I'm disappointed in how this is going. I can't, I'm too busy for me to have to remember to follow up. I need you to stay on top of me. So the reasons relationships haven't worked out varies. Sometimes it's that they're not on top of me enough to keep me going because I have so many other responsibilities. Like I need them to help remind me when things are due or when I need to get back to them. Other times it's been a respect issue where they don't want to change their process and start working with somebody who has knowledge about it and don't respect that we have our own law practice backgrounds and our legal experience, and we have our own approach to how we want to run a legal function within the company. And so there's been a differing opinion there of what is the best way to run the legal operation within it. So it's been interesting. And sometimes when I've terminated relationships with outside counsel, I've gone through an RFP process to really find the right fit for us. And other times I've gone when I've even reached out to there's a Peloton Law Moms Facebook group where I put a post of like, I'm looking for a new IP counsel. and I interviewed 12 people that I met through a Peloton Law Moms Facebook community. So it's like finding people that you might jive with and be able to talk with and have a better relationship with. We have a great working relationship now. So you never know where you're going to find those relationships and build them.
Absolutely. Ramona, will you jump in here and let us know your background with your outside counsel?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. There's a couple of different aspects to kind of my historic background with outside counsel. Kind of from the start, ThoughtWorks was a pretty well-staffed in-house legal team. So outside counsel for a very long time were really just very narrowly used, very project specific, not really viewed as strategic advisors. As we matured and as our needs grew, we started to develop more strategic relationships with outside counsel, some of which I had brought in. This was before I took over as general counsel. And then we had those relationships for a long time. And then we had the transition from a privately held founder-owned company. We were purchased by, and I'm sorry about the background noise, by a private equity firm in 2017, at which point we transitioned our outside counsel relationship to the firm that our new investor and owner were also comfortable with. So that was an interesting transition because they were also on the other side of the deal when we were being purchased by the private equity firm. And really, there was a lot of nurturing and trust needed to grow that relationship. From my perspective, I think it was a little bit easier to understand kind of what their role was in the transaction and where they added value, and the importance of having the trust of the PE sponsor and both of us, and the efficiency that really brings from your outside advisor. But certainly from folks within the business that may have been less used to working with lawyers and were negotiating various points across the table with these advisors, it was important to kind of build and understand that relationship and kind of nurture, because there's definitely a switch in mindset. And I think the other important part was, ThoughtWorks is a very culture-led organization, and I don't know that fully clicks to any outside advisor, actually, if I'm honest, until you're really immersed in ThoughtWorks. And then this became especially important as we went through the IPO process. I think that was the point where our outside advisors, actually both counsel and other outside advisors, really got to understand what we meant when we said we're culture-led. And the collaborative nature, the way we get things done, the buy-in that's needed, I think for a long time maybe was taken for granted. And some of the pain points that I had as the GC were maybe a bit taken for granted until they understood kind of really how we get things done and within ThoughtWorks.
That's helpful. I think all three of you touched on some very important points, centering a lot on your particular needs for outside counsel and what you do to communicate those to your outside counsel. So speaking from my own experience, it is very clear that what one client wants is very different than another client. And it is important to have that conversation at the outset and set forth realistic expectations of what it is that you truly are looking for in outside counsel. When you're going through the RFP process, which I think all three of you have really done, or terminating counsel, is there a communication either through the RFP process or as you're trying to cure some of the breaches that the current outside counsel are working through, to get them to understand really honestly what it is you need from outside counsel? Ramona, I'll let you go first.
So we actually haven't gone through the RFP process, but definitely something that I think about as we grow and our needs grow. I think for me, really understanding our business, and as I mentioned before, the cultural implications of the legal decisions that we make is really important. That's really got to be number one on the priority list. And I want somebody that is going to really think about the implications of that in terms of the advice that I give and put themselves in my shoes, right? Because you've got to deliver business advice in the context of your organization. And someone that isn't going to put themselves in my shoes, that's going to be challenging. So I think in the future, if we think about running a process, we're very good at sharing information. One of the top priorities for me would be somebody that I feel comes in and listens and really understands and tries to apply their legal knowledge and put themselves in my shoes as the GC of a very culture-led organization.
Great, thank you. Julie?
So I have two interesting things that I found really tell me a lot when I'm going through an RFP process looking for new counsel. One is seeing if they ask about our culture. There are so many law firms that just jump right into, here's our work, here's who we are, here's what we do. And then the few that pause and say, before I tell you about you, tell me about your culture, tell me about how you operate your legal function, tell me about how your interactions are with your business team so I can help make sure I speak to those points. Those are the folks that tend to be the ones more successful that I want to work with, because they are customizing and taking the time to learn who we are, how we operate, how we function. And then relatedly, I like to ask the question of how do you view the legal function and with respect to the rest of the business, right? So like if I'm asking somebody from a contract standpoint, if they're going to be my outside like overflow counsel for helping me with contracts, I don't want somebody who's going to redline everything just because they're going to redline. I want them to help explain, well, we're only going to put a red line in if it's truly something that we would walk away from the business for. Right, and helping me to see that they get the business implications is really helpful. So I listen to how they speak to how they view legal and how they view the legal function, because it helps to see, are they the right fit for our company? So those two aspects have been helpful for us as we're sourcing outside counsel.
That's excellent advice. Jacqueline, do you have any additional insight onto this issue?
Sure. We very routinely are running RFPs for new matters, not because we don't have, some really great outside counsel, but because we operate in so many different states and have a very diverse set of legal needs. We often have to reach out to new outside counsel. And it's really a combination of whomever is running the RFP being upfront about what our culture is. I love Julie's point about seeing if they ask. I think that's a really good sign. In general, what we're trying to look for are outside counsel who are invested in our success, not only on this particular matter, but in our success as the consigliere of our business clients. So, the in-house legal team's success. And we can see that in these RFPs where you can contrast an RFP that is your typical booklet of attorney bios and other representative matters versus one that demonstrates that this team has already begun thinking about how they're going to work up this case. I mean, it's basically free advice. Anybody on this webinar that is outside counsel has had the experience where you're basically giving free advice, but the best free advice tends to be the one that gets the pitch. And it does take some free work. It's like Costco samples. Everybody loves the Costco samples. And if it's a good sample, probably coming home with a huge box of it. And it's very similar for the RFP process. You're looking for folks who, are invested in success and will define success in the same way you do. It's one thing to get outside counsel that, if they're carrier panel counsel, you see a lot of risk aversion there. That's not how our company operates. We want the right outcome, which means we want to do the right thing. And that's not always aligned with risk aversion. So we embrace risk where it's appropriate. And if we have outside counsel right out the gate, even after we've told them that this is our culture, telling us how they plan to resolve this case through settlement when they don't even know the facts of the case within the first 30, 60 days. And we know that they haven't been listening and that their view of success is not going to align with our views of success. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for as well and during that process.
Yeah, I think what all three of you make very clear is the relationship is more like a marriage. The more communication you have, the more discussions you have upfront as to your expectations, the better that the relationship is going to prosper. I can put in my 2 cents and say I always do better and have better relationships with clients who sort of trust me as their therapist almost. You know, hey, this issue arose, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think I need to proceed in some legal manner, or do you think there's a business solution to this? And I think for any outside counsel that are on this webinar, it is important for everyone to consider that these are all outside general counsel at profitable companies. And you have to keep the business perspective completely in mind as you are going through this. They don't care for legal memos, at least in my experience, and you all can tell me if I'm off. They don't care to make sure that every single point is analyzed, you know, to the letter of the law. What they're making sure here is that it works for their company and the culture that they have created at their company. If you have had, and this is a question that came up in the chat, if you have had to terminate a relationship and start a new relationship, walk me through what decisions you had to make to get the buy-in from the people around you, whether it be your C-suite, other legal advisors, even people that started the relationship. How did you make that decision and how was it thought of at the company? I think Julie and Jacqueline, you both have done this. So Julie, I'll let you go first and then Jacqueline. And then Ramona, if you have anything to add, go ahead and jump in after.
Yeah, every relationship I've had to end came from a relationship built by one of our C-suites, either at one of the companies I've been at. And so there's always that navigation of how am I going to get them to buy into the change I want them to make. And this is where my change management background, I think, has benefited me, because I want them to be part of the decision. And I go to them with facts as to why I'm making this decision. Like, this has not been working out, and here are the 7 reasons why, and here's the benefits we would get if we do this. Here are 3 options of where I'd like to consider, and I'd love you to be a part of the process because your business is very impacted by this decision, and let's partner together to fit the right. I'd love you to interview these folks and help me make the right decision. And having them be a part of that process has been really successful in their ultimate buy-in to making that switch. And so that's generally like the steps that I've followed. That's a very high level overview.
No, I think that's helpful. Jacqueline, do you want to jump in?
Sure. We in the legal department have quite a bit of autonomy to make those decisions. There are very few relationships that our business, isn't going through us and relying on us to make good decisions on. We are really the face of legal advice for the company. So when outside counsel is making a recommendation, that's going to, if it needs to be communicated to the business, it comes from us in the way that the business likes to receive it. And so they really trust us to make those decisions. So when we have to make a change, what's at the forefront of our mind is it going to net benefit the company? And things you have to consider is how much is it going to cost to make the switch? Are you going to be able to get new outside counsel to agree to waive the costs of ramping up? And then how much disruption is it going to cause the business stakeholders to be dealing with new folks? It is very frustrating for our, in-house, our internal business stakeholders if they have to repeat themselves, attend meetings that they feel like they've already attended, and that would reflect poorly on us. So we have to come up with a plan to ensure that the transition is seamless, if not, even invisible to them.
Great. Ramona, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit because we don't actually have that much experience, doing major transitions of outside counsel. But what I will say we have is, so we operate in 17 countries. And so as we've grown our various international locations, we've brought in-house lawyers. And I think one point, we've obviously had some external counsel in those locations before we brought in the in-house legal team. I think an important point that the outside counsel on this call should take into account is you should make sure to build the relationships with those in-house lawyers as soon as they come in, because we've taken a position that's very similar to what Jackie just described, of the in-house legal teams really own those relationships. Now, I don't know if we've gotten lucky or if we've just set up the expectations right from the onset, is that we haven't had a lot of issues with those outside counsel not really pivoting well to those relationships. Again, part of it is the usage of outside counsel hasn't been that significant. So there's not a lot of ingrained previous relationships. So almost everyone that I can think of has done a really great job pivoting to seeing the inside counsel as their primary contact. And you know, that's kind of a must. Otherwise, I'd have a very different answer for you now.
So a question just came in, and I think it's very relevant to what we're saying. How did you source the outside counsel that you're working with now, especially where there is some deep expertise needed? I know, Ramona, your company just went public, so you obviously had to source counsel to handle that matter. That obviously is a little more specific than general counsel, outside general counsel. I will add my 2 cents, and then Jackie, you can go first. So the thought that I have is, if you do have general outside counsel, we are happy to source for you some recommendations, which is a start for you. We do it all the time. We will ask all of our attorneys, you know, we send out blasts saying, do you know anyone who is, you know, specifically versed in X matter? And we're happy to pull that information for you. At least it gives you, you know, another person to interview. And obviously, if our family of attorneys or someone at the firm has worked with them, we would have some background in that relationship, which is helpful. Jackie, do you want to speak to how you pulled in counsel?
Sure. So that's one way, right, is leveraging our networks, both within our current legal team and, you know, our trusted outside counsel that may have leads on appropriate specialists. And then absent that, or depending on the matter, we have a couple of sources that we routinely consult. One is NAMWolf, which has great options for women and minority-owned law firms. So that's one source that we often check for many of our commercial premises liability and employment matters that are in states that we can't handle in-house ourselves. Another is a global network of law firms that are local law firms, called the Alpha International Network. And we've had great success, particularly on our premises liability matters there. And then another source where I've found really great lawyers, you know, even before matters arise, is through the California Minority Counsel Program. And often at their conferences or at their webinars, they'll have opportunities to meet with minority-owned or minority attorneys. And that's a great way that I've met with a bunch of different counsel that have demonstrated in more of a group setting, or oftentimes they'll have one-on-one sort of speed dating formats where you can get to know counsel and just see if they get it right away within that first 20 minutes. So those are some places that I like to look.
Great. Julie, do you want to add?
Yeah, it's all the same sources Jackie said. I think some of the additional ones are looking for local CLEs that are hosted on topics that are relevant to me and attending those pre-COVID, and for the remote options at this point still have been ways I've found counsel, or when I've been researching and I'm finding some great blogs and I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I was trying to figure out. And I look at the firm, I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to reach out to them if I have an issue on that specific topic. But then there's a fantastic network of women GC lawyers that we have an email listserv that we ping each other all the time of like, I'm looking for a lawyer that does blank. What recommendations do you have? And it's a really great resource. And then a couple other like just women lawyer groups that I've been a part of. I always ping my colleagues and ask, hey, I need somebody that does X, Y, Z. And the same names tend to come up over time, which is interesting because they're all nationwide groups. And I think a lot of folks that have really put the time into building out their practice with blogs and sharing their content and having like easy access resources available to share has helped to get names out of some of the firms I've worked with.
Absolutely. Ramona, I know you've had such very appropriate experience here, absolutely having to get your public company counsel and also trying to deal with the PE counsel that you inherited. So go ahead and speak to your experience.
Yeah, I think maybe the more interesting part to add on that is kind of thinking about in kind of the post, public company world as we've kind of had to adapt our strategy in some ways. So for the IPO, we went with our historic counsel that we inherited from the PE firm, and that that just made sense for so many reasons. Again, that trust we had built, the trust they had, effectively just made it much more efficient to handle it that way. But the interesting shift that we had was maybe going from internationally a more localized approach, and kind of using the same resources that I think we've already been talked about. But particularly when we thought about in the employee equity space, having to shift from that localized counsel approach where we're really, finding the right counsel in the right location, to actually really prioritizing maybe perhaps a bigger firm that had a global reach, so we can get a consolidated view. Because where I came to is if I had counsel in 17 countries looking at our equity plan and making sure that it worked in all of those 17 countries, the burden was then on me and our in-house legal team to pull that all together. Whereas if I had one firm, even if though they might be more expensive, but that operate in all of those 17 countries with that equity expertise, that value really was just worth it because they could handle that cross country coordination. And that was an interesting kind of aha moment that I think we had, that we hadn't really fully thought about, because we definitely were of the mindset of always looking at right counsel in the right place. We hired lawyers, not law firms. But it was a mind shift to think about, actually, there's a lot of value now for these kinds of things, where somebody else is bringing it all together, because coordinating 17 different outside legal firms, I don't think anybody wants to do.
No,
Or even if you cut that number down to like half, you still don't want to do it.
well, it just sounds like all of your job, which you have other things to do. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit. So I think, as outside counsel, I have seen effective relationships. I have also seen ineffective relationships. And one of the most infuriating things on my end is when I have in-house counsel who only come to me when things are emergencies, or only get to us not as a partner, but as a very transactional, I need you to do this document, I need it by X date, and I need it done only at certain costs. Are there things that you can do as inside and in-house general counsels that would make your outside counsel relationships more successful? Obviously, for me, communication is high up there, but also just treating us as humans, right? We go on vacation, we have other partners that come in and fill in, we work with associates that you often interface with. What are you doing? What are you seeing that sponsors those relationships and really treats it more like a partner as opposed to a transactional relationship? Julie, do you want to go first?
Sure, happy to jump in. So there's a few things we do for counsel that, like, for example, our intellectual property counsel that we work with on patent and trademark work, we have regularly monthly calendared meetings. And when we first started working with them, they, without charge, did a 2 to 3 hour meeting to learn our business, learn our technology, and just meet a bunch of people. And that gave us so much trust that we could then have an hour billable meeting that translated into a patent application draft with very minimal work on our end. And that built a really great relationship for us to be able to rely on them and trust them. And if any IP issues come up, I can call them as my bat phone for IP matters, and they know our business, they know our company. But I proactively, like, I know I have some deadlines coming up to convert provisional to non-provisional filings 3 months in advance. I say, hey, what's our time frame for this? I don't want you working nights. I don't want you working weekends. Like, work life is important for our company, and it's important for our partners that we work with. And so always, I'm very clear if something doesn't have to be done immediately. I always say that out loud to the person, like, I don't want you working tonight on this. This is a tomorrow thing. This can be a Friday thing. Like, please don't work your weekend over this. I try to plan ahead. And if I do have emergencies come up, I'm very clear of like, here's all the steps I've taken to prevent this from being dumped on you. And I'm very, very sorry. And I try to be human. And then I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise to get like a bottle of wine or a little Starbucks gift card as like a, hey, I know you just busted your butt over the weekend on this and gave up your time with your family. We really appreciate it. So we try to make sure that treat them as if they're on a team member, because they are our extended team members.
Yeah, I don't think people can in any way estimate how important a thank you is for a, just checking in to make sure that you're okay. I had a baby about 2 years ago, and the number of my clients who called to check in to say congratulations or kept asking all of my other partners and associates just to say, like, did she have the baby? Did she have the baby? That makes a great relationship, because I am invested in you as a person, but I'm also invested in what you're doing for the company, and making that partnership whole, I think, is very important. Ramona, do you want to add some comments here?
Yeah, I think there's a certain responsibility, and I felt a certain responsibility, especially, again, early days when we were building our relationship, to make sure that I am fully transparent about what's important to me and what's important to the organization. And, I think we as the in-house legal team need to invest that time as we build a new relationship, again, especially if we think it's going to be worth it. If you don't think it's going to be worth it, then I would question why you're working with this outside counsel. But we have to invest some time to make sure that we are getting the right advice, having discussions such as, risk tolerance, again, what the business expects from you, and you also have to be honest and vulnerable about what you need. Again, I've never been at a public company GC. So a lot of the conversations that we had of like, look, these are my pain points. This is what I need. This is where I need you to make me look good in front of the board or in front of the C-suite. And just being really honest about the needs of the organization and kind of yourself in the role of the general counsel is critical. And if they're listening and they're following all the things that we talked about at the beginning of the discussion, where they're asking questions and doing more listening, hopefully it sets it up for the right foundation of a strong relationship.
I think it's important what you said. Listening is probably our greatest skill as outside counsel. I don't think necessarily every attorney does that well. We should definitely shut our mouths more often than we do. Jackie, do you want to add your strategies for creating a successful relationship?
Sure. So what you said, Pyle, about the personal relationships that you develop with your clients, I think it again can't be understated how much better and stronger a relationship with outside counsel is when you actually like them and there are warm, fuzzy feelings you have about them. It is a symbiotic relationship. Your success as in-house counsel depends in large part on how successful that relationship is and whether you are prioritized by your outside counsel as someone that they want to see succeed. And likewise, for me, I think that the best outside counsel relationships that we have are ones in which our teams, so not just one lawyer to another lawyer, our teams are investing in each other's success. So I love to seize on opportunities to give junior lawyers, associates on the teams that work for us, opportunities to have interactions with our attorneys. I will give them praise when they've done a good job. For some of the counsel that have gone up for partnership, and I know they've gone up for partnership and they've done a great job, I will send notes or call their managing partner and tell them that I think that they are great candidates for partnership. And we also look for ways to for development opportunities. So, one thing I'm working on with some of our outside counsel is a writing workshop that we could do together that helps generate more professional development opportunities for both of our teams. And, the great resignation that's impacting the law firms, it affects us too. When a really great associate that works on our cases leaves, we feel that the quality of support that we get goes down. And so if we don't want that kind of disruption, I feel like we should grab the problem by the horns and try to make it better ourselves and contribute to a solution rather than being constantly frustrated that our outside counsel are losing really great associates. Because it's not just about one lawyer, it's about a successful team. So we try to find ways to invest in those teams, and we expect our outside counsel to do the same for us. I love to see it when our outside counsel are looking for opportunities to amplify the voices of the folks in our team, find them opportunities for speaking, sending them to conferences, things like that. Like it really should be a mutually beneficial long-term relationship.
Yeah, I think, what's important and that what has been said is all outside counsel are here to make you look good, but you all can also make us look good. And it just ends up being such a mutual relationship. And we can be your trusted advisor if it becomes that mutual relationship. I think we're getting closer to time. So I think we should run through what you think your final takeaways are to transition outside counsel to that consigliere relationship. Ramona, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is number one. I think we've said it quite a few times in this conversation, and then a number of different ways. The communication has to go both ways. If we as the in-house lawyers want the kind of relationship where we're looking as our outside counsel as strategic advisors, we've got to set that up right from the beginning as well, and be open, transparent, and give them the information that is going to be important. Of course, on the flip side of that, the outside counsel need to listen. They need to ask questions. They need to have the perspective of understanding what is important to the general counsel, all of the members of the legal team, and the organization. And that's really where the foundation of the advice should start from. I think they should also make sure to understand different working styles of the different people on the team. That's also very important. And then last bit, I'll say just, again, from the kind of ThoughtWorks perspective and just the way we work as a consulting company, all of this is even more important, right? Because in a consulting company, like, you're co-creating with your clients. We're not going to our clients and saying, this is the application you need. They need to tell us the application that they need for their business, and we build it for them. And we definitely take, our approach to outside counsel very similarly. And that's when we really see that value and that very strong strategic and symbiotic relationship, when it's really a consulting relationship.
Julie, do you want to add your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think my final thoughts are to trust yourself and to listen to your gut, whether you're feeling, and to share your feedback, right? Based on what your gut feelings are. If you're really grateful that someone did a great job, take 2 seconds and send an email and say, hey, you did really great on this. I'm just glad to have you on the team. Glad to have you as a partner to support me. And if you dread picking up the phone to talk to one of your outside counsel, that's telling you something, right? Figure out what is not feeling right about it and talk to them about it. And if it doesn't get fixed, then find yourself a better partner, because it just is going to hold you back.
Jackie, if you want to add your 2 cents as well.
Sure. I was thinking that for my final thought, I would share an anecdote that I like to share because it relates to one of our law firms that really has developed a great relationship with us, and that I often recommend to others. So I remember we had given our outside counsel this weekly update template, and they have very faithfully every Friday morning, just as we asked, sent it to us. They took our feedback of, this is a great opportunity to have one of their junior lawyers send the update, just like I did when I was, a junior lawyer at the firm, because it gives them visibility. It gives them opportunity to speak with us directly when we have questions. And there was one time where they sent the update, and it was a great update, very helpful, gave me exactly what I needed. And I said, this is great. The only thing that's missing is like a joke of the day. And I was like joking, but then the next week they had a joke of the day in the email, and we've had a joke of the week every day, every update on Fridays. And I love that, because it's human and makes you have good fuzzy feelings about those folks. They were listening and they knew I was joking, but like, who doesn't want a joke of the day? There actually are probably lawyers out there that don't want a joke of the day or a joke of the week, but what they did was tailor their approach to the person that they were serving. And they know that I enjoy, you know, a dad joke on occasion, and they made their like service catered to the team that they were serving. So I always like to tell that because they were listening, they knew their audience, they did something appropriate, and then we all have a good laugh on Fridays when we're signing off work that for the weekend.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I would love a joke of the day. So anyone's welcome to send me one at any point in time. It'll make my days much better. So I think for me in particular, I think for Outside Counsel, adapt. Every client's a little different. Do what you need to make sure that you are servicing the needs of those clients. Listen, which is most important, and then communicate. All of those three, I think, would make you a successful relationship and be trusted to be the consigliere for each of these companies. I want to thank all three of you for joining me in this conversation and for the fourth floor for sponsoring it. Breen, I'll turn it over to you just for wrap-up thoughts.
Thank you so much, Pyle, and really thank you all of you. What just a fantastic roundtable discussion this was.